Well, hey, everyone. Oh, that was weak. Hey, everyone. That's better. Welcome to Atlee Church today. So glad that you're with us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Trey Critzer. I'm one of the pastors here and one of the teaching pastors. And it's an honor and a privilege to be with you today. And how many had a good Thanksgiving? Anybody have a good Thanksgiving? Yes? Okay, most of the hands raised. For those of you who don't have good hands raised, I'm sorry. But I am glad that you're here today. For me, my family had a great Thanksgiving. And just to let us all feel better about Thanksgiving, turn to somebody next to you and just say, man, it looks like you lost some weight. Can you do that? Just let's make us all feel a little bit better about what we just experienced. Well, I don't know if anybody else had a hard time standing and singing all those songs this morning, but I did, because my family, we actually had 3 Thanksgivings this year. We decided to travel and visit all of our family, and we visited my family and then my wife's, both sides of her family, and so we had a great time seeing everybody. But by the end of the time, I was like, I cannot breathe. I'm going to have to stop by a clothing store and buy new clothes for church on Sunday because I've eaten and consumed so much. But it was such a blessing to see everybody and hang out with everybody. And I even got my favorite Thanksgiving dessert. And if you don't know about this, trust me, you will today, and I will change your life because of it. If there was any reason for you to come to church today, it was to learn about this. It's Ukrop's chocolate pie. Anybody know about this delicious treasure from heaven? Yeah, right? Like, this is some godly stuff. If you don't believe in God, just eat this and you will automatically just know that there is somebody that created heavenly things here on earth. And so I consumed the pie and it was great. And then I said, you know what? It's time to teach my son something great about life. And so I decided this year he was going to try some chocolate pie. And look at that smile. I mean, that just says it all, doesn't it? I mean, he got to experience some greatness this Thanksgiving. His stomach didn't feel so good after that smile, but it was a good moment while it lasted. But we had a great time with family, and I hope you did as well. Hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving, and I'm so glad that you decided to be here at church today because we've been talking over the last 2 weeks about this idea of how to do the holidays differently this year and how to make the most of our experience while we're with people that we love the most. And so today, as we continue, we're going to continue in this conversation around the idea of Thanksgiving. Last week, just to give you a little bit of a recap, we talked about the word thanks. And today, we're going to look at the word giving. Because I believe there's 2 words that our world needs right now, and our families and people close to us need, are these 2 words: to be more thankful and to be more giving. Last week, we talked about what it means to be thankful and how we can be different this holiday season. I shared with you some very different and very difficult ways to do the holidays differently last year. And I even told you that these are going to sound impossible because they're just so different from the way that we normally spend our holidays. But I promised you this, that if you'll put these things into practice, you'll do your holidays different than ever before. And you'll be so thankful that you learned these tenets that we talked about. Last week, we looked at the first 2 from this group called Advent Conspiracy, and they're brilliant as far as helping us understand how to do the holidays differently. And here's the 2 tenets they gave us last week as we looked at them. The first one was to worship fully. Everybody say worship. That sounds like a weird word when we think about the holidays, but the idea of worshiping fully simply means this: to give gratitude, to give thanks to God, and to focus on Him, not all the other things around us, but to give God thanks and put our focus, time, and attention on Him during the holidays, because really, that's what this season is all about. The second tenet we looked at last week was the idea of spend less, to spend less. And here's what we talked about that last week: spend less on the wrong things so that we can spend more time on the right things. Spend more time, resources, energy, our focus, our intentionality on the right things can make our holidays so differently. And so if you missed last week, please go back on demand, watch that this week just to catch yourself up to where we are today. But today we're going to be looking at the second word of the word Thanksgiving, of the idea of how to be better giving people, how to be better givers this year when we look at how to do the holidays differently. And so the question I want you to think about this morning as we kind of wrap our minds around this is, think back to last year. What was the best gift that you received last year? What was the best gift that you received last year? Some of y'all are like, I don't even remember what I had for breakfast this morning, yet alone what I got for Christmas last year. But just try to go back in your brain. Can you think of a gift that meant something to you, or that you just, can recall very quickly? I know for me, we exchanged gifts with family members and did all that last year. But there was one thing that we did differently last year, and it became the best gift that I had ever been given last year because of the fact that it was so different than anything we had done before as a family. My wife, she loves to be on Pinterest. Any wives like to be on Pinterest? Yeah, that's a whole nother world for me. I do not know how to use Pinterest, but my wife is like a Pinterest guru. She's got all these charts and maps of things that she loves and all these things. And so she found this holiday calendar that basically is through the month of December, and each day there's something different that you can do as a family. And so she printed this thing off, and that was her gift to our family this year, was to do this whole holiday differently, to have something each day for us to do together. And so there was nights where we would make cookies together, and our house turned into a giant cookie factory and a mess. And then the next night we would together sit down and play games together or watch a Christmas movie. And then we would go on tacky light tours and all these things to get us out of the house and spending time together as a family. And I just so much enjoyed that gift last year because of how different it was. And then not only did we do stuff together as a family, we also helped other people together as a family. We participated in the Operation Christmas Child Shoebox thing and packed boxes together and did that. And then my wife thought it was great. One of the things on there was make Christmas cards. So we made Christmas cards for all of our elderly neighbors in our neighborhood. And our kids made them and had so much fun. And then we, with our kids, went to their homes and delivered these to their house. And it was just the smile that it put on some of these neighbors' faces just made our Christmas, and watching our kids be able to serve and do something besides just opening a bunch of gifts, but to really do the holidays differently. And that just became such a great gift to me because I love seeing us as together as a family do the holidays differently than we ever have before and really make a difference. It was a very different Christmas for us, but I can tell you this, it was the most memorable because of the things we did together. And I hope today, as we talk about this word giving, that it helps us wrap our minds around what it could look like this year to give differently and not make our life about all the money and the presents and stuff like that, but choose to do something different that would help us stay connected as a family, but also help us connect with other people around us who may need us more than we think. A lot of us, when we hear the word giving, what do you think of? Most of us think about money or the big presents under the tree and all these things that we spend stuff on. But really, the word giving means this. I looked it up in Webster Dictionary this week. It says, providing love or other emotional support or caring. Isn't that a different way to look at giving this year? Providing love or emotional support, but caring. So this idea is that when we give, we care for other people. When we choose to give, we choose to care. How many of us look at giving that way? The idea that we could give and help people and care for people that really need us. Today, we're going to look at a particular passage in the scriptures together that helps us understand what real giving really looks like when it comes to the way Jesus instructs us to give. This story Jesus is telling is about people giving others something that will help them in their life. And as I read this passage, I want for you just to focus in on a moment and think about this, about all the people that are mentioned in this passage that receive help and that the giving made a difference in. And then I want you to imagine for a moment that Jesus is talking about you, that Jesus is talking about your family. And I want you to see if this would describe you today as you think about your holiday season. So if you have a Bible or a light-up Bible like a phone or an iPad, you can turn with me, Matthew 25, and we're going to look at a very famous passage of Scripture in verses 35 through 40 that's going to help us understand this word giving. And if you don't have one of those, it's okay. We'll put it on the screen for you. You can read along with me as well. But here's what this passage says, starting in verse 35. It says, "For I was hungry, and you gave." Everybody say gave. Right in the beginning of the passage, we see the word giving, that they gave. And look at all the things that they gave. "When I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry or feed you or thirsty and give you something to drink? When were you a stranger and we invited you in, or needing clothes and clothed you? When were you sick or in prison and we went to visit you? And the king will reply, truly, I tell you this, whatever you did for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did to me. You did to me. See, this is a whole different realm of giving, isn't it? The idea that our giving is not just about giving to people right, in our family or getting all these different gifts for Christmas, but the idea that our giving could impact the world around us for the better. And I remember when I first heard this passage, there are several different things that I thought about, but I didn't realize there were so many cool ways to give in this passage. There's so many different ways that we could help other people right in our backyards that I didn't even realize was in this passage. But I had known this passage for a long time because I remember this passage being so ingrained in me. My parents, they own a Christian summer camp for teenagers. And every summer, this was the mission kind of verse that we would study together as a staff. And each week, we would all take turns reading this passage before the kids would come, because it was our idea to look out for those kids who really needed us, to be on the lookout for those who needed help, those least of these. And then when we saw them and spotted them, spend the entire week trying whatever we could to help them. And I just remember hearing that whatever you do for the least of these, whatever you do for the least of these, you do unto me. So whenever we help people, whenever we look out for others, whenever we give, it's not just for us or for others around us, it's ultimately to God himself. And so today, what I want us to do is to look at this passage together and look at the last two tenets in the Advent conspiracy so that we can learn these last two things to do the holidays differently. And my promise to you is this, is that it doesn't mean the holidays are going to be easy. I know a lot of us have a lot going on. A lot of us have some good things for the holidays we look forward to. And a lot of us, this time of year is hard. But if we can take these tenets and put them into practice, I promise it can make the holidays so different than ever before. And it can help us make an impact more than ever before as well. So let's look at these two together. Here's the last two tenets we're going to look at as we explore this together. The first one that we're going to look at today is give more. Everybody say give more. All right, making sure you're with me. Give more. And I know this sounds super simple because it's something you've probably heard a bunch, right? You've heard in order to be a better giver, you can just give more things, give more away, give. And many of us look back at last week and say, wait a minute, didn't you tell us last week to spend less? How are we supposed to spend less but give more? Like, that kind of sounds like an oxymoron that doesn't make sense. And I'm questioning this speaker's intellect at this moment because I don't know if I can do this. How does that even apply to my life? The good thing about these two tenets is they actually go hand in hand. The idea that when we spend less on things we really don't need and that our kids really don't need because they're going to move on to another toy next week, the idea that it frees us up, it doesn't allow us to be so stressed worrying about how we're going to pay for things that we can't afford, and instead focus on ways that we can give our time, attention, resources to things that really matter. The idea that we can begin to help other people around us. We can open up our eyes to see how we can spend our time and resources to make a greater impact. Let's go back to the passage that we just read. It said this, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me." See, they gave things that people really needed. They gave them water, food, clothing, things you and I, we take for granted every day, don't we? The idea that we have a roof over our heads, that we got food in the fridge to eat, that we got clothes on our back, and we can survive another day. Do you know that's a luxury for some people around us? They don't get to experience that in their lives. Maybe some of you struggle meeting those basic needs every day. And for us, we can choose, instead of consuming more and more, we can begin to take our eyes off of ourselves and look around us and say, who around us could use what I have? how could I be a blessing to somebody else? They chose to make themselves available to not only get things, but to give things away. And so the idea I want you to think about this Christmas is that it's not all about the presents, the actual gifts, it's about your presence. The idea that you're going to be intentional about the way you spend your time, your resources, and thinking about how you can give the best version of yourself to those around you. Because a lot of times I think gifts are just a cop-out to give people stuff so that we don't have to spend time with them. It's easy just to go buy our kids the most expensive gifts and throw it under a tree. You know what's harder is to sit down with them and talk with them and ask them what's really going on and be there for them. You know, it's the same thing with our family. Some of our family are crazy, aren't they? Like, it's so hard to spend time with them. It's like, God, I'd much rather just send them that thing from Amazon and not have to worry about talking to them. But the truth is, they may need your presence more than they need that weird present that you're going to send them that they're never going to use. What if this year wasn't just about giving gifts? It was allowing ourselves to be a gift. It was actually paying attention to our spouse when they're talking to us. Maybe it's giving our focus to our kids instead of just throwing another TV show on the TV. Maybe it's getting off of our phones and actually talking to our families instead of looking at everybody else's family and comparing ourselves to them. See, we can do the holidays differently. But like I said, it's not going to be easy because it's different. We're not used to it. We're so used to being about us and focusing on us that it can be difficult to focus on other people. So here's what you can do this year to give more presence of yourself away. You can find gifts that make a lasting impact. Find places to give as a family. Maybe go serve somewhere, help somebody else out. Maybe serve together as a family somewhere that maybe you've never been to, that there are people in need in those places. Or maybe find ways to just be a blessing to others. And here's the deal. The Advent Conspiracy, go to the website, adventconspiracy.org. There's hundreds of different ideas on there and different things to print out for your kids and all that. You can sign up at the top, and it gives you all these free resources. And so I would encourage you to do that, or you can be cool like my wife and go on Pinterest and print out a weird calendar and do some weird stuff together as a family. And trust me, it will be great. You'll enjoy it, and your family will too. Because here's what the Bible teaches us. Hebrews 13:16, it says this: do not neglect to do good. Everybody say good. Do not neglect to do good. Share what you have. Share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. So the idea is that when we stop putting the focus on us and what we're going to get and buying our kids that Jumbotron thing that they don't need, it's the idea that we can really focus in on sharing and helping and sacrificing, because those things are the things that are pleasing to God. Those are the things that he cares about. Those are the things he created us to do. But you and I, we turn to make everything about us. In this holiday season, let's do something different. Let's focus on other people. Let's give more to the right things. And so today, let me just ask you this. Just think about this in your own mind and heart. Do you consider yourself to be a good giver? Do you consider yourself to be a good giver? Why or why not? And do you give your time, your resources, your love freely to those closest to you and those around you? And if not, how would you like to see that change this year? How would you like to be a better giver this year? How could you give your time differently? How could you give your money differently? How could you give your resources or your attention differently this year? I know I got some work to do in this area. I know there's people in my life that need my attention more than ever, and it's time for me to stop being so distracted or stop being worried about buying them the right gift or whatever, and just giving more of myself. I know that can make a great difference in my family and those around me if I choose to do it. And I know it can make a difference in yours as well. So that's the first tenet, give more. And the second one we're going to look at is this, the idea for all of us to love all. Everybody say love all. If there's any encouragement in the scriptures to do something, it's the idea that we are called and challenged and created to love, because that's what God gave us. Christmas is the chance to move closer to those in need and those in crisis. We will love others as Jesus has loved them by going to the poor, the hurting in our world and reaching them through God, and choosing to celebrate Christmas by going to those in need instead of pretending like everybody else is fine. Last year and a few months have changed us all, haven't they? I mean, if you just go in a grocery store, you can see how this time has changed us all. Through this pandemic season, it's caused all of us to become a little self-focused, because a lot of us were told different things about us surviving, hunkering down, grab your family and keep them close and don't, get them around all the germs and all those things. And while those things were necessary for our nation's survival, I think a lot of us, the problem is we turned everything about us and making sure we were okay and making sure we had what we need, that we forgot about other people around us. We forgot that what it means to put others first. And I think a lot of times what happens is when we become so self-focused and on our needs, we miss out on people right in our backyard, people we pass every day that could really use us. And I know those things were necessary, and I know we still need to do those things, but my challenge to you is this: let's not be so focused on us that we miss out on an opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus to somebody else. Because there is somebody out there that could use your life. They could use your love. They could use your encouragement. They could use your friendly ear. They could use you. But you have to make yourselves available to them. And so the question remains for us: how do we show Jesus love more this year to other people? Let's look back at our Bible narrative that says this: I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. I love these words because it's not just like we had to buy the food or buy the clothes. There were other ways that we could give too that I never paid attention to in this passage. The idea that we can invite people in to our lives and homes and make ourselves available to them. We can look after people that we know are in need. And we could go visit people that we know are struggling or needing help or assistance during this time. And I love this because it reminded me there are so many ways for us to give, so many ways for us to make a difference if we just make ourselves available. And so this year, will you make yourself available to love differently, to love those that need you right now, and maybe those you don't even know that could use your love as well? If there's anybody that ever modeled this well for me, was my parents. I remember every year my parents did a phenomenal job of providing for us as kids. We always had great gifts and all those things, but my parents every year would be on the lookout for that person or that family that needed help during the holidays. And they would always, I don't know why, they were like little Christmas elves. They were running around looking for the right person to help or that needed assistance. And man, when God would bring that person to their lives, my parents, even in our poorest of days, would do whatever they could to help those people. Whether my dad would leave and go help somebody, shovel their driveway, or my mom would, make something and bring it to somebody, or they would take whatever they had left over and they would give it away. They were such great role models for me. And so I would encourage you, if you're a parent, I promise you, your kids are watching you this time of year. They're watching the way that you spend. They're watching the ways that you help. And I know that they love the gifts and they love the presents, but I promise you, as I look back on my childhood, I remember the times that my parents sacrificed for people that they didn't even know. And the prime example of this was a few years ago, we decided as a family to be crazy. And for the holidays, we decided to go to Tennessee for the holidays. We always wanted to see the big lights going down Gatlinburg. So we all got in our campers and we showed up at a campground and we went camping for Thanksgiving. And it was a little dysfunctional, but it was great. We survived. And bringing a newborn on a camping trip was a horrible idea, but we learned our lesson. So we just won't do that ever again. But there were some great things that happened while we were there. We got to spend time together as a family. We were doing stuff differently. And this time was for us, right? It's our vacation. This should be time where we're relaxing and enjoying things for ourselves, enjoying time together as a family. Well, we go out to this one restaurant one night. And we're all sitting around talking at the table, and our waiter comes up, and she was, just kind of in distress. You could tell something was up, but, she wasn't really, voicing it to us. So she takes our drink order, and she comes back, and I could see kind of the wheels turning for all of us as we're looking at this lady. And we said, "Hey, what's your name?" And so she tells us her name and what was going on, and she was like, "I'm so sorry if I seem a little frantic. I came in to work this extra shift to just provide for my family for the holidays. I have a newborn at home, and it's just hard. I had to bring him to the grandparents' house so I could come work this shift." And she could see our kid, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, how old's your son?" We're like, "Yeah, he's a newborn too. We understand the struggle is real. We get it." And so she was laughing and looking at our child, and you could just tell it was kind of making her night. Somebody actually took time to talk to her. And so later on, she brings us our meal and our dessert, and we even asked her if she wanted to come sit with us, but she was like, "No, I got other tables to wait on." But we just kept making this connection with this lady, and for whatever reason, my parents turned to us and said, "Hey, you know how we give to somebody each year?" She said, "What if this was the person we gave to this year?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think that's a great idea." And so all of us collectively, put some money around the table, and we thanked her for her service and all that she had done for us. But we just said, "Merry Christmas," and we want to bless you for your holidays. So there's something in there for you. And so we tucked the money in the thing, and we just left. And on our way out, she comes running towards us, and she goes, "Thank y'all so much." She's like, "I had no idea." And she's crying and weeping. She's like, "You don't know how much I needed this." She goes, "I came to work this extra shift so I could just pay the bills and have Christmas for my kids, but you don't even know what this meant for me and my family." And it's moments like that that help remind me that this time of year isn't just about me. And it's not just about you and what we can receive and what we can get. It's about the idea that we can give. We can be on the lookout for people that could use a blessing this time of year. And it's those stories, those things that I remember the most when it comes to my family and things that we give together. Yeah, gifts are great, and you can still give those, and those are fine. But it's this kind of stuff, the stuff when we can give more to things that matter, and we can love other people the way God intended us to love. That's the kind of stuff that really makes an impact, not only here on earth, but also in eternity. Listen to this verse, 1 John 4, 7-9, tells us about how we should love. It says, "Those who are loved by God, let his love continually pour from them to one another." Isn't that incredible? Let our love continually pour out to one another because God is love. Everyone who loves is fathered by God and experiences an intimate knowledge of him. Listen, if you want to know what it really means to be in a relationship with God, to have a closeness with God, love others the way that he has loved you. And I'm telling you, you will not experience God more than when you do that. It later says, "The one who doesn't love has yet to know God, for God is love. The light of God's love shined within us when he sent his matchless Son into the world so that we might live through him." You see, we're able to love others. We're able to do these things. We're able to give because God first loved us and gave everything for us. When we didn't have nothing, when we were sinful in our own desires and ways, God still showed up. God still was on the lookout for each and every one of us and showed us a love that is beyond comparison. And now it's our job to take that love that we've been given and give it away so that others can experience God in their lives as well. And so this year, can we do something different? Can we give more to the right things? And can we love other people better? Love others the way God has loved us? Because when we choose to do that, we will promise to have a different holiday experience. But in order for us to do the holidays differently, we're going to have to worship fully, put our time and attention back on God. We're going to have to spend less on the wrong things and spend more on the right things. We're going to have to give more of ourselves and of our stuff in the right direction. And we're going to lastly have to love all. We're going to have to love people better. And when we do those things, that's when we experience being a more thankful and a more giving person. And so what do you want your holidays to look like this year? Do you want them to look like the same old stuff, buying the same old stuff that you can't afford? Or do you want to do something different this year? I hope that you would take this challenge, however impossible it may sound for you and your context and your family. And I pray that it impacts you like it's impacted me for so many years. And so today, as you're at lunch, as you're hanging out with your family or your friends or people around you, I want you to ask yourselves these questions around the table together today to start this holiday off right. And here are the questions I want you to ask yourself and each other. And if you're in here, you can take a picture of these questions and take it back with you. Or if you're watching online, you can see the bottom of the notes there. But here's the questions I want you to think about and consider with you and your family today is this. Do I consider myself a giving person? Why or why not? And ask people around you those questions. The second one is this. How can I give differently this year? How can you give differently this year? Instead of just on the presents and stuff, how can you give differently this year? And then lastly, how can I show someone the love of Jesus, somebody else this holiday season? How can you show somebody else the love of God this season differently than you ever have before? Because remember how they in the passage showed the love of God? Let's go back and read that scripture one more time. It said this. Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? But the king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for the least of these, brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Whenever you did those things, whenever you gave, whenever you invited somebody in, whenever you went out of your way and put your focus on something else besides your own needs and wants, whenever you went out of your way to love somebody and care for somebody, whenever you did those things, you made a difference. And you also did them unto God, because that's how he created you and molded you and shaped you to do this life, to love others well. And so my prayer for you this season is that those words would describe you, that you would love others well. You would give them more of yourself than you ever have before, that you would be on the lookout for those who are in need. And like I said last week, some of this stuff may seem impossible to you. It may seem like, how will I ever do this? But the scriptures remind us of this, that with God, all things are possible. And so you can do this, and God has equipped you to do it. And this holiday, let's put our focus, our strength back to where God wants it to be. And as we do the holidays differently, let us be closer to each other, closer to God, and make a difference to those around us more than we ever have before. And I know this isn't an easy challenge because everybody would be doing it, right? But I do know the difference it's made in my life, and I know the difference that it can make in your life today. So I just want to pray for you as we wrap up our time in our service today, that God would give you strength and courage and everything you need to do this well this holiday season. So will you go ahead and stand up wherever you're at, and let's pray and ask God to be here for us, to lead and guide us this holiday, to show us what it really means to do the holidays differently. You can do this, and I promise you it's going to make more of an impact than you ever thought it could. And so let me pray for you that God would be with you, that God would give you the strength you need to make this happen this year. Let's all pray together and ask God to be with us. Jesus, I thank you so much for who you are, for being the incredible, loving God that you are, that you decided to love people like us. But God, you did it to show us an example of what it means to love others well. And God, I pray this holiday season for every single one of us that we would choose to do the holidays differently, that we would give more of ourselves, that we would worship you fully, that we would spend less on things that don't matter, God, and that we would love other people well. And Lord, I pray today that you give us everything we need and that we would be reminded that nothing is impossible with you, that you can be there with us, that you can help us. And Lord, I just pray for each of us that we would take this stuff, we would take your word, and we would act on it. That we wouldn't let this be more knowledge, but God, that we would allow this to be action from our souls. And God, that you would meet us every step of the way. We thank you for allowing us to be here today. We thank you for your son, Jesus. And we ask all this in his name. We all agreed together and said, amen. Can we've got a hand for our time together today? Awesome. Well, thank you for being here today. Hope you have a great week, and hopefully you survive all your Thanksgiving food, be able to work that off this week. And we'll see you back here next week as we start our Christmas series. Isn't that crazy? Christmas is here, so bring somebody with you next week to see with you, and we'll have a great time. Have a blessed Sunday. We'll see you back here next week.